Oh, yay. Love when technology works. Welcome back, everyone. I am just so thrilled that our podcast is now out there in the world. If you want to start checking out our episodes, wherever you listen to podcasts, you should subscribe or follow Biz Book Publishing Hub. I live stream the interviews whenever, whenever our guests are available, but you can catch all of the episodes and the archive notes and all of that by going to bizbookpublishinghub.com. Without any further delay, let me introduce this week's panel. Writing, publishing, and marketing your first business book can be a wild ride with plenty of uncertainties. Getting those ideas out of your head and into a format people can buy is a huge win. You should definitely celebrate that. But remember, publishing is just the start, and that's why we're back with another author panel. Join us for an open and honest chat about the highs and lows of being a business author. These amazing authors participated in one of my Kindle Cross-Promotion campaigns, where we feature over 75 business books at just 99 cents each. Our teamwork helped many titles hit the top 10 in their categories, with 30% even snagging that coveted #1 bestseller spot. Today's panel will dive into the real-life experience of being a business author and share helpful tips to make your author journey smoother. We're here to learn from each other and see how a supportive author community can make a difference. Before we dive into this panel, here's a quick word from our sponsor. Let's hear from our fantastic panelists and soak up valuable insights into writing, publishing, and marketing your business book. Ari Krzyzek wrote Made to Sell, Creating Websites That Convert, which offers practical strategies for designing and optimizing websites that turn visitors into customers, focusing on user experience, clear messaging, and conversion tactics. Bill Soroka is the author of 6 books, count them, 6, 5 of which reached #1 bestseller in at least one category during the last Kindle Cross-Promotion campaign, including his latest, Your Passport to Apostilles, 116 tips to build a thriving business as an apostille agent. Marc Pitman wrote The Surprising Gift of Doubt, Using Uncertainty to Become the Exceptional Leader You Are Meant to Be, which explores how embracing uncertainty and self-doubt can help leaders unlock their potential, improve decision-making, and ultimately become more exceptional in their roles. Please join me in welcoming Ari, Bill, and Marc. Ari, I'm going to toss this first question to you. I want to know who you wrote your book for. Who's the ideal audience that you had in mind? And welcome.
Thanks, Robbie. I'm excited to be here with all of you guys. Let's see, my book. When I wrote that book, there's a very specific target audience that I really want to help, right? I've worked with a lot of women-led brands, and whenever they came to us, they always have issue with their website. And after looking at a lot of these websites for the past, up to like 10 years, I was like, there seems to be a repetitive pattern here, right? There's just not enough strategy in the beginning for them to really think through how do you leverage your website. So the book really is helping a lot of the business owners, right? Primarily in the early stages, or maybe you're redesigning your website, trying to figure out what is the right strategy to think of before you even start designing it, before you even start hiring, web developers to tackle your website.
A website design or redesign is such a huge undertaking. So I love that you have a resource that can get us asking the right kinds of questions and figuring out when we need to bring in some experts who can guide us, as opposed to what I did for my first website, which was, well, let's not talk about that first website. All right. So Bill, Bill, I would love to hear who you have in mind. You have a pretty niche audience for all of the books that you've been writing. Who's that audience?
Yeah, definitely. So all of my 5 business books are designed to give notary entrepreneurs a framework for growing their business. I'm on a mission to help notaries serve more clients, make more money, and build a business that thrives, even untethered to the mortgage industry, because those loan signing appointments tend to get all the attention, but there's so much more we can do in service to the public.
notaries was not something I thought a lot about, except when you need one, right? Until I got to know your community, and I've done some conferences that I produced for your community, and fun bunch. One, not as buttoned down as I thought they'd be. I remember that bingo night we all had there on virtual, but also very entrepreneurial, building businesses. It's sort of like it reminds me a little bit of the world of virtual assistants, where not all virtual assistants think of themselves as business owners, but the ones that do really can build out a whole empire. And I feel like it's similar. These are people who are very entrepreneurial. This is something that they maybe one of the many things they're doing, and you're showing them how to amplify that. There's a lot more to it than, like you said, the day that I sat there and they just kept pointing to the next place I had to sign for give my life away in order to get the house, right? Like sign. Marc, go ahead and unmute and share with us who the audience was for your book, The Gift of Self-Doubt.
My audience was the people that I've been coaching for the last 21 years and the people that I'd like to coach for the next 21. So it's founders or senior leaders, people who have started their own companies or nonprofits. I work in for-profit and nonprofit, or people that are newly promoted to going from individual contributor to actually managing other people. And it's not just any of them. It's the ones that feel doubt and feel like they're the only ones that are experiencing this lack of confidence. It turns out in my 21 years of executive coaching as a Franklin Covey certified coach, all the leaders I've worked with have experienced that, and all of them have felt they're the only ones. And there must be something fundamentally broken with them. So I wanted to normalize it for them and say, hey, it could mean you're on the verge of greatness.
I'm curious, when you first, Marc, started writing this book, what were the metrics you were going to keep track of to know the book was a success? What was not now? I know it's probably changed as you've become a little further along in the author journey, but when you're first writing the book and first publishing the book, what would show you that this book was being a success?
Excellent question. This was my 8th book, so I had a different set of metrics for this. This was my stake in the sand metrics. The first 15 years of my coaching practice were branded as fundraising coach. So everybody knew me as the nonprofit guy, which I never saw myself as. I always saw myself as the leadership guy. So this was the book that was I'm a leadership guy who happens to love nonprofits, but I help leaders. And so this was a pivot in my brand. And so that the fact that it was getting out there and looked professional and was well edited, it's the best out of my 8 books so far. But that was the metric for me, was getting it out there. All the sales and the certifications and stuff I've done since then have been wonderful, but I needed something that didn't say nonprofit in the title in my Amazon listing.
Yeah, so that it widened your reach quite a bit because it wasn't just that narrow sector focus. Yeah. Ari, I'm going to come to you with the same question around, when you were first getting started with this book, did you have a particular sort of metric? Like, was it sales? Was it hitting number 1? Like reviews? Like, what was important to you early on?
I would say a couple. The first one, definitely getting that best-selling ribbon right from Amazon. That was a huge metric for us. But also the engagement when we did the launch, as well as the reviews. Those are a lot of the key pieces that I was hoping, like, okay, we get all of those as our metrics and really hit it. It would be, it would be great for us. And we did.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Bill. Bill, can you roll back to your first book? First of all, what was the title of the first book you did?
Sign and Thrive, How to Make 6 Figures as a Mobile Notary and Loan Signing Agent.
Which, by the way, I just got to say, I was just looking at this book. It's probably the one that has the most sort of action on Amazon. It's been around a long time, but it's not like people have stopped talking about it. In fact, you've got reviews as of August 15th. Like, this is a really recent, like the last month you've had reviews coming in. That's really, that longevity is key. But when you started this journey as an author, what initially did you think was going to be important as far as, like I said, sales, hitting number 1, reviews? Like, did you have any idea what was ahead of you?
I had no idea. And it definitely was not what I expected afterwards. I had hired a coach, taken a course, read tons of books about this. So I knew what they told me my metrics for success should be. So I just kind of went along with that. for sure. I wanted to be a bestseller. I wanted to write a book that helped people. I had found this business that just literally changed my life, from broke and not able to figure anything out to actually having a sense of purpose and contribution. And then, of course, making significant revenue as well. And I wanted to share that with people. So, so I just thought bestseller just meant that people were buying it and it was getting distributed, and I was helping people. The royalties, everybody told me you'd never make any money writing a book. So I didn't have really high expectations for that one, but that has been proven incorrect. The royalties can be quite nice. And then the long-term strategies that I implemented, because I did some learning ahead of time, has panned out really well.
Tell us a little bit about that. So your thinking has clearly evolved. Your definition of what makes a book successful has evolved as you've kept publishing books, much what like Marc was sort of alluding at a moment ago. So as you started writing the more recent books, what became metrics for you to focus on that were a little different than what you first thought of when you were first writing that first book?
Well, if it wasn't possible to get more niche or niche in my audience, I did. And that's one thing I would say was extremely helpful. And I've heard this all the time. The riches are in the niches, and I thought I knew what it meant. But you really don't know what it means until you really start peeling away the layers of even your own industry, even your own company, your impact, and realizing just how narrow you can get that down. And when I get that narrow, I'm talking to the right people. So there's not this pressure to write a best-selling book that millions of people buy. There's just this relief that I'm writing a book for the right person. The right person is going to be able to pick this up, and it's going to change their life.
That's great. And also, I feel like because you've now built out a whole ecosystem around these books of other ways of creating revenue and providing value, it all starts to make more sense. And we're going to get into the sort of more business focused side in a moment. Marc, can I ask what's changed for you given this last book? I mean, your goal was to rebrand you. So I'm guessing that part is happening. What else became important as far as like how you thought of the success, how the book was helping you grow your business?
For me, the publishing a business book is one of the weirdest things in our digital age, because it still has that credibility of you're the expert. Even though I've been blogging for over 20 years, I've been doing, writing and speaking, but having that printed book. And so some of the things that I have been surprised at as metrics of success are the number of people that have responded back to me about the impact that the book has had on their lives. One that's really important to me is my best friend and wife says it's the best book I've ever written. That's been huge because that's saying a lot. But the most fun that I've had is turning the book into an International Coach Federation certification, accredited coach certification course. So I have 39, and almost now we're starting at the time of this recording another cohort, but we have 39 certified coaches on 3 continents. And the fact that I did a lot of work to make sure it was as inclusive as possible. And the fact that it works in Kenya and Vietnam and across North America, that to me is a huge success, because I'm getting to impact people in ways that I could never do in my own work. The books are doing it for me.
And you couldn't have seen that possibility until the book was out into the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is the part that's so wild about being a business author, is that I'll just tell you my answer for this question. My first book I wrote because I joined the National Speakers Association, which is one of the ways Marc and I know each other. And I just felt like writing a book was like having a website or having a business card. Like it was a requirement if you're going to be a professional speaker. And so I wrote initially, it was like, well, I have a topic, and so I'm going to write on a topic. And so it took me a little while to niche, and my niche was not very narrow like Bill's. Mine was people who go to conferences, which is not everybody, but it's a lot of people. But I had this moment right as I was getting ready to bring the book to the editor, the manuscript, that it was a good book. And then I wanted people to read the book. And that gave me pause that like, I shouldn't just hit publish. And that was the first time I ever really thought about what came next. And I think, Bill, you and I had some of the same coaching around launch philosophies. And I took the ideas that I was being given from these other authors and I amplified it in the way I guess I would do. I rabified it. And I came back with 150 reviews for my first book within the week after the launch date. My goal was 100 by launch date. And I delayed the publication in order to build a launch team and do all these things. And these folks that had given me the framework were like, what? I was like, what do you mean? I just did all the things you told me to do and like 17 more things. But, I basically did your thing. So I, turns out, love marketing, particularly the launch part where you're really trying to get a lot of attention. And I've given a lot of consideration about this. So we're about to talk about reviews, which is my happy place, but not everyone's happy place. This panel, I think, did a pretty good job. So I've had some panels where they all kind of shrink a little bit when this section comes up. But, Ari, I'm gonna kick things off here with you because you hit over 20. You hit 27 written reviews and 29 total ratings. So first, I just want to say the ratings, for those who are listening, that's the stars. You don't actually have to write anything. You can go to anything on Amazon and just rate it. So it is what it is. So I always look at the ratio between ratings and reviews. So 29 ratings and 27 written reviews. That tells me you made an effort to get reviews because, one thing to get a campaign of people to like write ratings, right? But to get over 20 means you had some process. Tell me a little bit about how you thought about reviews, where they're kind of coming from. Is it organic? Did you reach out to specific people? Are these friends and family? Like, just curious, Ari, where does those come? Where are all these reviews coming from?
Good question, Robbie. I wish I had you when I was launching my book, right? That would make my life so much easier. But it was my very first book. And I learned so much from that process, including like gaining that review and then like putting together your advanced reader list, all those different things. A lot of the reviews that we got are actually organic. People that know me, people who followed me on LinkedIn, people who are part of my different women's group, all those different things. But one of the different things I did when I launched the book is to give away bookmarks. Right. So with the bookmark, it's like really cool. In the back of it is my logo. On the other side, it simply says, I want to read more, or one more chapter, please. Something quirky, something nice, something fun, especially for people who loves reading. Right. And near the bottom of that, I would just refer it to my book. So if you ever read my book, this is my book, link to the Amazon, and then leave a review. So that just get shared to so many people. And of course, when I go to networking events, I would just give it away for free. So that's one of the tips I did.
Awesome. Definitely you had some idea that they were important. You follow up with people, and you also wrote a really good book. We should always remember to say on these calls that you got to write a good book. You got to write a good book. It's got to be a valuable book with a very specific audience in mind. Maybe it doesn't have to be quite as niche as we were talking earlier with Bill, but it has to have a very specific idea of who would benefit. And then you need to get the book in front of those people, because then they're the ones who are going to feel compelled to say, oh my God, this is an amazing book. I want to tell people about it, whether they post that on social or they post it on LinkedIn or on Amazon, all of it good. So Marc, you've now done this a few different times, this whole idea of writing books. And this book of all your books has the most reviews. You've got 65 ratings and 47 written reviews. Honestly, you're so close to 50. I want people who are listening to this to get you over 50 written reviews. So close. But I mean, clearly a plan in place, because I always say I want to work with my authors to get 50 or more written reviews. And I say, because the effort to do that requires a lot of planning and purpose. So how do you approach this?
Well, for this one, I went to the people that I respected, that had large followings, and that also had sold books, because there could be some people that are really great at moving digital sales that aren't necessarily good at selling books. So I have 22, I guess if you count the cover, probably 26 endorsers including Seth Godin, who I didn't expect. I asked, but everybody came back, and it was kind of an embarrassment of riches for the publishing team and myself, because we didn't know how to position all these great speakers and world-class people. And then I also did a wonderful, if we have time, I can tell you about my launch day or launch days but I was actually asking people. I asked all the endorsers and some of my pre-readers, but I didn't have a lot of pre-readers with this one, to endorse, to write a review of the book. And then I've just, it's been out for a bit, so I've been consistent also about continuing to ask people to review, and not just sending them the link on Amazon, but sending them the link to the review. So going down on the screen and doing so that they just pop right into the screen that they need to, so they don't have to find it themselves.
And are these people, Marc, that have sent you some sort of complimentary feedback in an email, and you're like, oh, hey, can you write that as a review? Or people that you just know have the book? Like, have they already written something, or are they starting with a blank page?
They tend to be people that I've asked, that have told me good things about the book. I'll always do a dual ask. I'll always ask, hey, that's great. Could I just quote you and publish it anywhere? And usually people say really quickly yes on email, and then I'll say, and would you be able to put that on as a review? And it's not that's a higher ask apparently. So I have had less results of that, but more than with my other books.
Yeah, you do have to do a little bit of follow-up. My process, even with all the hand-holding and follow-up that I do, I tell clients that if you want 50 reviews by a very specific date, let's say, 2 months out, you need to get 3 times as many people on your launch team. That's 150 people. And to get 150 people, you probably have to ask about 200, because they're not all going to get back to you or paying attention or seeing their emails. And then they kind of go, I don't know 200 people. And I'm like, yes, you do. And then we go through that process of having them realize they have a lot of people in their network. And that's a big piece of what I focus on too, is getting reviews from likely prospects and referral partners, because then you're building the pipeline to the next offer. I've had people reach out about doing a relaunch, and I'm always surprised if they have over 30 reviews. And then one woman said, oh, my friends and family came through for me. And I was like, facepalm, because they don't have budgets and they don't need what you sell, and they're not referring you.
Well, what you're saying too, though, is important to the specific ask. I did 97 podcast interviews as part of my promotion for the book, and those were great for a lot of different reasons, but they didn't get the reviews. So I love the specificity of asking for them.
Yeah, so there are different types of marketing. I tend to think that launching is something that happens between publishing and marketing, because before you particularly pay for PR or ads or podcast guest placement, make sure your book sales page on Amazon looks awesome. Like, it's got sales, it's got reviews, maybe it's already hit #1, which to me isn't the focus. It's a byproduct of all this. Bill, that first book you wrote, this is why numbers are so funny. 1,475 ratings. Honestly, that's remarkable all on its own. There are 280 reviews, which is also phenomenal, but that's a huge difference compared to RA's numbers. It's a lot easier to get the ratio close when it's not 1,475 ratings. Clearly, people are loving this book. It seems like it's also a good book for beginners, people who are thinking about getting into this work, which was a wider part of the niche that you were talking about. But then as you've gone forward, your next, I was thinking one of your more recent books, the one you did with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So that's the one you did with our mutual friend. This book has 281 ratings and 181 reviews. It's a little more like people who are building a business, they're doing LinkedIn, right? So it's a little bit different. How have you approached getting reviews? Because clearly you've got a big following. You have people who love you, really into what you're doing. But as Marc just said, that's actually not enough to get a review, because it's just not. I don't know why.
Well, it's funny. I am blessed with an amazing, loving, and supportive audience that usually jumps on board really quick for any kind of book launch, either for me or with a friend or for friends. But yeah, there's a challenge in because the person who signs up and says yes is a different person that has to click the link to give the review. Something else happens there. So it's there is a little bit of hand holding, but also, one thing I've learned about this is we're not the only ones that reviews matter to. It's the entire industry. like 90% of consumers base their buying decisions on reviews. So I've incorporated the importance of reviews into my teaching and my blogs, whenever I'm teaching courses, for a couple different reasons. First, I think it's just good energy to keep that flowing. If you're going to base your decisions on whether you buy something on a review, then give a review. Even if it's not to my book, do it for the restaurant that you love to eat at. Do it for the dry cleaners that's so friendly for you. So we've got this ecosystem of giving reviews for just the good vibes and the good energy, and it helps business, because now we're in this position. Every notary is a solopreneur that needs reviews. People make their hiring decision of notaries based on the reviews on their Google business profile or on their directory listings. So anytime somebody comes to me and says, oh, I can't get reviews, I ask them when the last time they gave a review was. And that shifts their entire thinking. If you start giving reviews, it's weird, you start getting them. So I've kind of incorporated that into my whole methodology about this. I'm teaching them to be better review givers in general. And I don't know necessarily if it's translating to exact results, but it sure feels good. And I love
it feels good. And it's really interesting because, like you said, your readers are also people who need to figure out how to get reviews for themselves. Like, you're just talking about the importance of reviews. I remember like right after my wedding, one of the first things my wife and I did was we got all the photos and found great shots of all the things the vendors had done, and then went around, asked them where they want us to do reviews, and both looked for places that we knew we could find them, like on Google. And we took care of that. Like, we just were like, that's before, while the energy was really high for us and how excited and enthusiastic we were about it. I did that before I did thank you notes, like those were perfunctory. These had to matter. Really, really. I knew it was so important to them. I have written so many Amazon reviews that I got invited to be part of something called Vine, which is a products review thing, which I don't have time to really participate in, but my wife's really excited by. So it's like writing reviews has become just part, like you said, it's like a habit. But most people don't have that habit, and which is why I think it's so difficult. I separate out this process for your next books, or even if you're trying to do a little push, maybe around the next Kindle Cross-Promotion while your books are 99 cents, leading up to the next one, you can do a little push. I give people prompts for writing a good review with 3 or 4 prompts. My favorite one that I just added is share a quote or a line that resonated for you from the book. Because on like that and who should read the book is on its own could be a really good review. It doesn't take a lot of energy for them. And then I say, okay, here's where you put the review, right? So I might collect the reviews via Google form if I'm doing a formal launch, but even if I was doing a mini push for reviews and just getting people to write them first and then give them the link to where to put. And I love what Marc says about give them the exact place. I just know when people get there without having thought about it in advance, they just staring at a blank page and they're like, good book. I don't know what to write. And I have to give a shout out. Bruce Shearer recently bought up a ton of books for the Kindle Cross-Promotion we had in July. And I kept seeing his name as one of the top or the latest reviewers in all these books for all these things. I just went and looked at his Amazon profile. He wrote 16 reviews in July. So that is the kind of guy you want to have in your world. He understood the assignment. I just want to say. All right. So we're going to go over here to Marc, because I want to know, Marc, aside from getting reviews, what was your biggest challenge in this process? You're not new to writing. You're not new to publishing. There might still be, this is like a triathlon, right? You have to get everything right, all phases. What was the challenge this time around?
Does there have to be just one?
Oh gosh, please.
Okay, few. No, the first one was, I thought I'd written the book. It took me about 5 years to write this book. And I thought I'd written it, sent it to the people that I wanted to work with to publish it. And I am so glad that I didn't try to publish the one that I sent them, because I've learned with each of my books the importance of different types of editing. And so I had the full complement with this book. So the challenge kept being my editor saying, hey, could you open this up a bit? So the whole process, I thought I was there, and I was just at the beginning. The other part that was more challenging than I expected was publishers don't know how to market. They know how to print books and package books, but they don't know how to sell. So even though I had worked with a publisher that I will fully work with again, I love the hybrid publisher we went with. I still had to do it all myself. So what I learned from them though is having, similar to I think what you were saying, is the 3 months of the books were published, printed, listed on Amazon, and then they gave it 3 months for Amazon to figure out where to put it. And that's when I did all my interviews and my podcasts and all. So I think those are the two biggest parts that were the struggles for me. Currently, now that the book's been out a couple of years, the one thing I'm promoting in the back, which is my podcast, is not something I've done since my launch days, because I overcomplicated it. And so I can't wait to work through the first printing so that I can actually promote the certification, which is something that people are actually interested in and I'm offering too.
Well, we're going to get to that question in a second about how tightly the book leads to business. And like, it sounds like you had a little shift and maybe you created something new, which you wouldn't have known you were going to do without the book. Because it's a cart and a horse problem.
Mm-hmm.
That piece you said about publishers and marketing, I want to underscore this.
Mm.
For the BizBook Publishing Hub, which has more than 50 experts who, support entrepreneurs through some part of the author journey, writing, editing, publishing, and marketing. There's like, I don't know, 14, 15 hybrid publishers. Is a good chunk of them are hybrid publishers. And I met with all these people for at least half an hour. And consistently, there was these messages around publishing and marketing. And one of them just flatly said, you hire a publisher to publish your book. Some may have some kind of package or offer or referral for marketing, but that is not their job. Their job is to, and so hire based on their ability to do that well, because we all have heard the horror stories when that goes off the rails and it's not good. But then really get clear about what your goals are and hire for that. So if you really want to get reviews, that's my jam, right? If you want to get on a podcast tour, go hire someone to do that. If you want to do traditional PR, go with a PR agency who really understands it. Like, there's all these other ways to look at marketing, but don't just assume, even a traditional publisher, they only put all of their energy and budget behind a small fraction of their overall author list, because those are the people they know are going to sell books. And the rest of us, maybe you qualified, but you're in the back of the pack, even though you qualified. So, Bill, I want to come to you the same question about, the biggest challenge. You're, again, a seasoned author. You've been building out a business around this. But this latest series of, when you think of your last book, was there something in particular that was sort of maybe a different challenge from before, and maybe one you've had before? And more than one is fine.
Yeah, thanks. Marc paved the way for that one. I can think of two that jump out. First, with the latest, I released 2 this year, but the most recent, Your Passport to Apostates. That one was technically probably publish worthy 11 months before I actually published it. So the challenge for me now is I'm seeing books differently. Like if I compare my latest one with my first one, I'm almost embarrassed by that first one, even though it's still the best-selling of all of them. I cringe when I read it. I'm like, oh, how'd that get through 2 editors, So the part of the challenge was how much time it took me to resuscitate this book. I knew it wasn't right. It could have been published, but I have to stare at it a little bit. And there's this magical time when a manuscript starts coming alive. And it just took a little longer than I wanted it to on Your Passport to Apostates, but we got it to a point where I'm absolutely proud of it. In fact, most of the feedback I get is this is your best book you've ever written. So that feels good too. But the real challenge for me is on the book I released in January this year. It's my first non-business book, and it's a short essay book called Dandelions, and it's my passion. that's what I feel like I'm put here on earth to do, is to write like that. And I can't sell it. I cannot sell it. My audience is like, oh, this is great. Yeah, we'll buy a couple copies, but we're here for the notary stuff, right? So it's presented the challenge that I think so many authors do have, authors without an audience, authors that don't have that specified niche, because it's not very specific. It could be, I wrote it with a writing partner with a totally different demographic and without an audience. So now I'm kind of figuring out still how to get that book out more.
That book is humbling for you, but it's the experience that most first-time authors have, which is they write the book that they're feeling really passionate about sharing with the world. I have a client right now who's struggling to figure out how to build a business off of a book that is a very valuable book. It's gotten good responses, but the range of people has been too diverse. So she can't figure out who specifically to message to. And she keeps trying different audiences to try to unlock it. And it's just like, it's really hard if you don't have all that figured out ahead of time. Ari, you had a lot of that figured out ahead of time, and I hope it makes you feel a little better. Any challenges that you're about to share with us, that these two people who've written multiple books are still finding things difficult. What was, and don't forget to unmute for yourself, what was the challenge, other than reviews, the challenge for you or challenges for you in this process?
This was my very first book. And on top of that, I co-wrote it with my husband, also my business partner. So that makes it a little bit more challenging, right? Because we have to figure, okay, who's writing which part? Are we writing things together? Which chapter is yours? All of those different things. Thank God we have a book editor that really helped us in the process. I don't know what I would have done if we didn't have him. So I didn't realize that, my husband and I have a lot of knowledge already. We have gone through a lot of business events. We have done a workshop, speaking, all those different stuff, until I realized we have a lot of the content. It's just not structured into a proper book chapters. So with the help that we got from the book editors, it became a lot more, what's the word? It's a smoother experience, right? He really helped us thinking through what would be the first thing that people need to think about, or if they experience X, what would they need to do? So it really just helped me think through oh yes, there is a system here. There is a specific approach that we need to take them through the process. So the process become our book outline essentially, and we just start writing from there.
What I love is that if you have the right kind of help, and it sounds like you had a developmental editor, which is a different kind of editor than a copy editor or a line editor,
yes,
a proofreader. These are all these different types of people who do some version of editing. But if you have a developmental editor or a really good writing coach who can maybe fill that role, then yeah, they can help you design the book. And then you end up actually creating a framework that you're like, yes, that's my framework. And then that framework helps you then create other courses and other material and other lead magnets. And so a book can get you really focused on helping articulate the way you've been running your business and the best way you've been helping your clients. So when you get the right kind of help, when you don't have that help, like my first book, I didn't have money. So I spent, I don't know, a few $100s, and a hope and a prayer to write a good book, right? And my last book cost, I can't even tell you how many times more than that first book, because I understood the value of hiring the right people. And if you don't know where to find those people, those who are listening, this is exactly what bizbookpublishinghub.com is there for you. So Marc, I'm going to come back to you to hear a little bit about your business strategy for the book, because it feels like it's shifted for you a little bit. I always think, how does the book serve the business? Sometimes I'm working with people who the book's already out and then we're scrambling to backfill, or the book's still being developed. And then we're really able to think, well, what's the offer that comes after this and all that? Tell us a little bit, when you were first writing the book, what did you think was the connecting point? Because you're a speaker, you're a coach, right? You had all these other skills out in the world. How did you tie these together initially? And then how has that changed as your experiences with the book has shifted?
Great question. Part of what I did was I started teaching the things in the book before I wrote the book. I found that if I'm workshopping them in front of audiences, it really helps me when I'm writing the book because I have specific faces that I'm talking to, or I know the parts that resonate the most. So I'm not living in that kind of imposter syndrome type feeling of, I think this should resonate the most. I can see it because I've seen it in the workshops and in spaces. The other thing that I did was in addition to hiring developmental editors and all, I hired 12 different people with different lived experiences or orientations than me to see, as a straight white guy, if this is as accessible to the people as I think it is. And so I had a ton of people. And the first page, the first section is called the Note on Privilege, explaining where I come from and what I've done to try to open this work up for others. So those are things that were important to my business because they have the equity and they have the resonance with audiences that I wanted. What I found out was it also serves really well. No matter how the book is selling, the coach certification that I've wanted to do for 21 years has become a double digit. So that means gone from 9 to at least 10% percentage of my revenue. And it's been impacting people as employees and as consultants in ways that I really physically couldn't have done. So it's been a great kind of intro and textbook for people that are trying to learn their leadership and become better human beings and better at helping other people develop themselves as well.
Years ago, I had the opportunity to invite a council member a Boston City council member to a class that I was teaching at a university. And he made this point that strikes me to mirror what you just said. How he ran his campaign was as important to him as winning, because whether he won or lost, the campaign was a demonstration of the way he wanted to envision the world and how others can come into it. So he had a lot of really thoughtful ways. Like, he had a story about walking away because he had to go teach his kids, coach his kids, I don't know, softball game or baseball game. And so he left his team in charge of making that big decision they had just been discussing. And when he came back, he said, "What are we going to do? Just tell me." Like, his trust, right? And he said that was really, really important. It sounds like the way you approach writing this book and the equity angle that you took to this is very important to you. It's how you want your business to be seen. It's how you're running your business. And it put you in touch with people who wanted to support you in doing that, which also gave you a boost in communities you may not have had access to around the book. So you didn't start with a transaction, you started a relationship, but in the end, it probably gave you a much further reach than you would have if you had just narrowly marketed to these little people who like look and sound like you. So it's cool that the success of the book was in the design of the book. What would you share?
Well, and also what I found out afterwards, I love looking back on stuff I've done and think, oh, there was strategy in that I didn't know. Part of it was the 12 different people that reviewed the book. And many of them I offered to pay, but they chose to volunteer. All the things that they said would have resulted as, or been left as, Amazon reviews negatively, which many of us that have books out know that a few negative reviews make all the other reviews seem real and authentic and not just like your friends. But there were some blind spots I had in my own upbringing and my own lived experience that were able to be flushed out and not inflicted on others in the published book because of this experience.
It also shows you had the relationships where they could be honest with you and not placate you.
Oh, yes. And they were not gentle, which is what I asked them to not be.
Yeah. Don't just blow smoke. Did you have lead magnets or other links or bonus content, or can people who are buying that book, like, and they're reading it and they're like, "Oh, this is really good." Like, is it clear how to connect with you after?
I tried to make it clear. I didn't, I've had some books where I put a lot of lead magnets in the chapters. And there were a little bit, but I tried to make my follow-up page at the end, want to know more, pretty clear. And then the offer of the podcast that I'm not doing anymore, which was a mistake. So I've tried to have we had extra pages anyway. But I also know that if it's in digital form or if it's in print form or audio form, which all three are selling, thankfully, that I wanted to have different ways that people could connect for sure.
Appreciate that.
And I put my email right in the front too, if people had questions.
That's a fantastic point. I actually have I don't know, different emails in the front of mine. I wanted it to not look self-published because all my books are self-published, but I think you still should make the effort. And so on the copyright page, I have a quantity sales section where if you go to sales@nameabook.com, and then there was also a permissions@nameabook.com if you wanted permission to quote something other than for a review, right? So like, and then during the welcome section, the intro, I put an email that was like, yay@book.com, because that way they could share a result that they got and then email it to me and I would know it came from that book. Excuse me. So Ari, I'm going to come to you with a similar question. You had a business already. You and your business partner decided to write a book to kind of distinguish yourself and maybe make your life easier, because the better your prospects are trained in how to approach this, they understand the value of what you do. It probably makes for a better relationship with them as they come on board. I approached a lot of my books thinking that. How closely did it all fit as a business plan? What was your approach as you were writing the book to how people were going to read the book and then think, oh, I've got to hire this person?
Yeah, we started thinking the book, and really put our efforts into it after our 10-year of anniversary. And really just like, what can we really, I guess, share to the world that can be that, first level of entry for people to get to know us, even if they don't know us yet. And that was the book. But really now we use the book as a big part of our marketing. Everything starts with the book. So either they, found us through either networking events or speaking at a podcast or events, right? They always just tell me like, oh, you're the one from that book. I got your book. And it's just so fascinating to hear that somebody else who are not your friends got the book. And then they tell you how the book has been so impactful for them to think through in their business. So for me, everything starts with the book, and we have a lot of different lead magnets as a web agency, right? We have that already put together. And now this year in particular, we have been thinking about how to expand it from the book, right? Really thinking through building a community from the book, or even like creating like website launch kit with the book, or just multiple branches essentially coming from the book. So now it just become a really clear pathways for us, not just like as a marketing channel, but also yet another source for income. Could be like a passive income for us down the line as we start, serving our current retainer clients.
It is so interesting that it's hard as the author to envision all the next possibilities, because it has to do with whether the book lands well initially. If you know who your audience is and you're built a launch team and even wrote with them, which a lot of you talked about, bringing people in as you're writing, then you're much more likely to create a product that does resonate. And you'll probably get ideas for new revenue streams while you're writing the book. And I would say, one of the things I've coached some people to do is pause the writing process until we've had a chance to meet with 12 to 24 people for a research call, nail down what they really feel challenged by, then make that the focus of this book, and also go back to them and try to run some kind of pilot program to test some of the concepts in the book. And then, so by the time the book comes out, 6 months later or more, there's this offer that's already up and running. And so now the launch party isn't so much a reflection just on the book, what's happened, but it's also guiding people to the next thing that the author can help them with. It's like, here's how we can continue supporting you. Bill, you are just, I have so much respect for what you've built. And I am so pleased that you decided to put all of your books in this Kindle Cross-Promotion campaign, and I welcome you back. Here's the question I have for you.
Yeah.
What's your biggest success story? Because I wrote a book, this other thing happened. What door was opened because you became an author?
Holy cow, what a great question. Okay, so I would say, aside from the intrinsic reward for actually having done that, because it was a goal of mine since I was 6 years old that I was going to publish a book, and I was kind of terrified that I might die without doing that. So personally, it was a very powerful moment for me. For business, though, I would say that writing and publishing my first book, Sign and Thrive, really made all things after it happen. So I literally have to measure my life before Sign and Thrive and after Sign and Thrive. Because as Marc was saying, it's instant credibility when you have a book. So suddenly I became a person in demand, a person who knew what was going on. I was called for speaking gigs, booked for webinars, podcasts, all of that after that. But also, but the biggest, coolest relationship, and the one that has probably resulted in at least helped with the sales, is the collaborations that one book has opened up. I have an amazing collaborative relationship with that book in particular, with the largest national notary association in the country, right? Where they actually sell my book. The call center reps have a copy of my book. They talk about it when new notaries call in. And that's been an amazing relationship that's led to even speaking gigs and all kinds of stuff. But then all because of that stance as an author, a passionate author. Like, I didn't just write a book just because, it's in me and it keeps coming out of me now that I've had 6 of them, but I've been able to collaborate with other authors too. So that's been the biggest gift, is I am surrounded by brilliant people way smarter than me. And by collaborating and co-authoring, I can tap into their expertise and I can draw out what they have to offer our audience and present that in a different way where they might not have done it without crossing paths with me or whatever it might be. So that's been probably the greatest gift, the greatest honor of this whole thing.
I feel inspired just hearing you say that. And I imagine anyone listening who's on the verge of committing to writing their first business book, I hope they hear that and they hear the potential that is created for just doing it. And it's not going to be your best book. And just accept that. It's okay. Make it as good as you can. Make it as relevant as you can. Pay the most you can for the editor. All those things. But just get that first book going. You'll learn a lot. And then I was told the way you sell book 1 is by publishing books 2 and 3. So keep going. Hey, we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to ask you kind of do a quick round robin here. I'm going to ask you to do 2 questions at once just to kind of speed this up. And we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor first. But when we get back, Marc, I'm going to come to you. What advice would you give someone who's writing a book to help them grow their business? And then I'll also remind you to share how people can find you and follow your work. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Marc, what's the advice you have for someone?
I would say to not think that the book is going to be your hidden revenue stream, although Bill has had different experience with that it is, it could, even if it's only an expensive business card, it'll get you higher rates and more notoriety and in front of the right people. And I'm going to add a second one on there is you got to do your own marketing. So no matter what the people that you're working with that are going to publish your book say, do all of the research you can and listen to Robbie's stuff and listen to anything else you can find on book launches and sales, because you're going to have to do it yourself.
And how can people find you and follow your work?
Hopefully I am incredibly ridiculously easy to find. Marc with a C, Pitman with 1 T, P as in Peter, ITMAN. ConcordLeadershipGroup.com is where Surprising Gifted Out and all the handouts and everything else can be found. LinkedIn is also a great way to get in touch with me.
By the way, we're going to put all the links in the show notes at bizbookpublishinghub.com. Ari, question to you. What is the advice that you would give someone who's writing a book to help them grow a business?
For me, really find the right help that you need. Right? It could be that first developmental editor, it could be the right publishing person, or it could be the marketing person. Wherever you feel that you need that accountability and extra help, that you're probably just going to push it down to the bottom of your list, make sure to get that somebody as your part of the team. In terms of where you find me, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm also on Instagram, pretty easy to find. I'm Ari Krzyzek, Krzyzek.
Fantastic. I'll put all those links in the show notes as well. And Bill, what about you? What's your advice for an author?
I think I have 2 pieces of advice. And the first one is have a no fluff policy. Readers are exhausted by getting fluff pieces that are designed to sell something else. So don't be afraid to let it all out. Share your expertise with your readers and your audience, because that will form a relationship. They will think, wow, he gave me all this in the book. I want to work with that person. Then they might stick around. They might stay in your ecosystem or your orbit and buy some of your courses or your consulting or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
But if you tease them and kind of make a brochure, they might get frustrated or pissed off, and then they don't end up buying anything from you. And then the second piece of advice is to, no matter what, realize that Amazon or whoever's selling your book is never going to sell that customer's information to you or give you that customer's information. So whatever you do, build in some kind of lead magnet strategy so you capture email addresses and claim your own readers.
I love it. And how can people find you and follow your work?
Yes, you can find everything about me at notarycoach.com and even billsoroka.com. And I am all over LinkedIn as well.
So all the links that we've mentioned, including links to their books and all their social media sites, their websites, will be available at bizbookpublishinghub.com, which is also where you're going to find an invitation to join one of my free virtual networking events for writers and authors to connect with each other and with our hub partners who are the experts on this site who will help you get through your author journey from writing, editing, publishing, and marketing, as well as all of these show notes. bizbookpublishinghub.com. Panel, thank you so much for sharing your ups and downs story.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.